It's a beautiful time. Enjoy it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm really excited today. I have my very good friend, Stephen Nabil here. Stephen and I have been friends a really long time. Stephen is originally from Iraq and now currently lives in Southern California, but we have done many trips to Iraq over the years, particularly through the war on ISIS. And yeah, just it's awesome to be here and to catch up with you and to bring some of the tidbits of stories that I've heard over the years, kind of into something of a cohesive light. So thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Holly, for having me. Holly has been a great friend of mine for many years, as you said.
Yeah, and we've changed a lot, I think, both of us since running around Baghdad days. Both of us
Yeah,
obviously have kids. Stephen is a father to a beautiful little boy. How old is George now?
he's three. He's
He's
three.
three.
And turned three in June. Yeah, he's definitely exciting now. It's that discovery age and running around and trying to discover the world. So definitely, I'm happy to be along the ride with him.
And how much of, I guess, Arabic, Iraqi culture, Assyrian culture, how much of that are you kind of, how are you raising George with in America, but with some of those values that you and your lovely wife grew up with?
Absolutely. The thing with the beauty of America that you could be an American, but at the same time, America wants you to incorporate your culture, to bring something from somewhere with you. Um, America is not an ethnocentric country or a country that wants you to wipe away everything, your memories, your language, and no, they want you as a country, they want you to keep your identity. So the question was for me as someone that embraces the American culture, embraces the American identity, as a proud American, proud Iraqi American, was how can I incorporate that being an ethnic Assyrian? How can I incorporate that into George that he can grow up and be a proud American and at the same time maintain his heritage, maintain where his father and mother came from. And the trick is we wanted to focus on making sure he's learning everything in English. That way, he's when he mixes with his peers and starts going to school soon, he doesn't find it difficult. He doesn't find it foreign that he already is learning these things in English. And at the same time, I want him to learn his mother tongue, which is Assyrian, Aramaic, and also know where he came from. But that slowly is going to come in as time progresses. I think he's too young for many of the bigger thoughts and ideas yet.
So are you engaging with him just in English for now
No, we're
or
engaging
in
both in English and Aramaic.
So tell us a little bit about I can never pronounce Amharic, which is really the oldest
Aramaic, yeah.
known language, known still spoken language. Tell us a little bit about that history.
Well, what can I say to describe the language of Jesus Christ? I mean, this is something that goes back prior to Christianity. It was spoken in Mesopotamia, ancient Iraq, spoken in other countries where the Assyrian and Babylonian influence reached out. It's remnant of Aramaic, the modern day Assyrian. A lot of words are similar, a lot of dialects are similar. It's preserving it, preserving the identity. To me, it's very important because it's not just a language; it's a language that survived thousands of years of killings and genocides and foreign rules and whatever that came through that land, and a lot of things came. So it is very important to keep that heritage and keep that language alive.
Absolutely. So just going back a little bit, tell us about your childhood in Iraq. You were a young boy when the US invasion happened. Tell me a little bit about just what growing up was like for you as a Iraqi Christian, and then what you remember when the invasion happened.
I remember it all. I was actually 15 when that took place, so I remember vividly every single moment prior and after. An invasion that changed our lives for forever. Obviously, it changed the country forever. Growing up in Iraq was unique. The people were amazing. The memories, the neighbors. We really didn't have much of a difficulty coexisting between different religions and different ethnic sects. Like I said, I'm Assyrian, and we had different variants of ethnic demographics and religious demographics. We had Arabs, Kurds, Turkmens, Assyrians, Chaldeans, Shabaks, Sabi, Mandai, and then religion-wise, you can go on and on with Christians and Muslims and Sabi'is and you name it. So Iraq was a very um, diversely mixed place. I grew up in the city of Kirkuk, which is in the north. Kirkuk, to the ones that have studied it or know about it, know that it's uh, an example or an icon of how Iraq is diversity-wise. It's a mixed city. Everyone lives next to each other. So I grew up with that, and that helped me shape my view on the world, that we could coexist in this world wherever we are. I didn't grow up in a place where it was absolutely 100% this or that. No, it was completely mixed. And it was fun growing up with that. Obviously, growing up in the sanctions era was not fun. Sanctions which the Iraqi people paid the price for more than Saddam did himself and his regime. So there were times where we didn't have milk, that my parents had to sell expensive things they owned to buy us milk because of the sanctions, to buy us food. And that was not fun, to watch your family just give up things that they cherish, wedding jewelry, things like that, to able to afford food for us. Obviously, I was young, so I didn't have much political activities, but knowing and feeling the pressure that parents and friends alike and neighbors cannot really speak much political speak unless they're 100% sure the other person is trustworthy, that he's not going to snitch on them. There's a lot of political pressure on people. Obviously, every few years, we either go to war, go on bombing sessions, or preparing for a bombing that could happen, waiting for Security Council resolutions. I mean, I was 8, 7, 6, 9. I remember vividly sitting there with my grandpa, my father, uncles, listening to radio stations, hoping that there would be no war, there would be no bombing. And no child should go through that. No child should ever live through the pain that he doesn't know if his country is going to exist or not. That shouldn't happen. So that psychological warfare was completely devastating. I would see pictures of my cousins. I had family members who migrated to the United States, to London, and they would occasionally, every 6 months or so, send us pictures with someone that came, through a postcard. And I would see them in places like Disneyland, Universal Studios, and parks, just random parks and neighborhoods, and say, "How come I don't have this as a kid?" I literally sat down and cried on staircase one time after seeing these pictures and said, "I wish I was there. I want to see these places. I want to enjoy these places." So I vividly remember that. That's why I try to tell my wife that I want to make sure that my son's memories are not similar to what we grew up with, because no child should ever think like that.
Absolutely. And I mean, gosh, I remember now, it just triggered my memory, for both of you who obviously got out of Iraq during the war and were able to come to the United States. And then, what was it, almost 10 years ago now that you were on your honeymoon coming back from Greece. And
eight
I
years,
was
yeah.
on my 8 years, I was on my way
Yes.
to Istanbul, and I was hoping to see you both. I was on my way to Iraq via Istanbul, and you were there. And that's when you may or may not, people may or may not remember, but that's when
The
I
ISIS
believe they
attack
were
in Istanbul.
yeah, there was an ISIS
ISIS attack.
attack. Several gunmen opened fire in Istanbul airport. Several people were killed, and you and Namin were hiding in a closet for a really long time, and with the gunmen just outside. So, tell us a little bit about the impact of that experience on you, on your relationship, and how you've both been able to kind of move on into parenthood from such a sort of traumatic time.
Absolutely. We were, for people wondering why would we get married in the Middle East, I asked Noreen kindly to move our wedding to Iraq. I wanted to celebrate it with our family members there, with our friends, and also to give an idea to Iraqis that they're not alone, that people around the world care about them, including Iraqis who migrated outside. We had the wedding, and then since we were close enough, I asked her, let's have our honeymoon in Europe, in Italy and Greece, and we'll just transport between the United States to Iraq and then Europe and back to Turkey, being a hub for international airlines. And that was the idea. We got to Turkey. All we had to do is just wait a few hours to wait for the counter for the other airlines to open up so we can give them our bags, and then obviously fly back home. This was post the honeymoon. We were done with the honeymoon. We were coming back from the Vatican at that point, from Rome. And while we were waiting, I asked her if she wanted food. So I went to get us some food from a place in the old Istanbul airport, not the new one, the Ataturk airport. And while I was up there in that island, it's not a floor, it's like an island. You climb through the stairs. I heard gunshots. I was Sabraro's pizza. I was waiting for my pizza for her. She likes pizza. And I looked up because, remember I said island, you can see the entire floor, the terminal. I saw people just running, waves of people running, scared, and gunshots going off. So immediately I know that we were under attack. My survival instincts kicked immediately, that I had to get back to my wife. The problem is, while I was running back, that the entire population of the airport is running toward me, so I had to push through people. By the time I got there, I saw her laying down on the floor. She was injured. Someone trampled on her leg, but she was scared. She was terrified. She was crying. And now it's sort of getting quieter, except screams of injured people and then gunshots going off close up. I saw the gunman, I would say maybe 1,500 yards, maybe. I can't really estimate through the airport. It's pretty vast, but I can see him because it cleared out. He was doing his thing and killing people. At that point, we knew that we had to survive. And what happened is, for the last 2 years, I was covering the war in ISIS, as you know, and I was covering the ISIS attacks in other countries, including Paris, including Belgium, Florida. So I was really into details of what took place so I can report it. And that helped me understand what could go wrong right now, what could happen, what should we do. So giving up or surrendering or none of that was an option. We had to hide and we had to escape. We can't reach the side where the population went, because what they did, they ran through the airport and they crossed post security. So that's where the security held their lines and sort of tried to defend what's left, to go deep in the airport. So now everything, counters and the check-in areas and the doors to the street, these were free fall. That's where we were. So now we had to hide there. We found a hair salon that was there in the airport. We hid there. Took us about 45 minutes or so hiding in their they had a small closet, not a bathroom, like where they kept their clothes and made tea. There was hot tea being boiled when we entered. I tried to cover her mouth so she was hysterically crying, so I was trying to keep her from being loud. Meanwhile, I was trying to figure out who's attacking us, so that at least we know what to expect if they find us. And I instructed my brother through my phone. I was texting him. I said, look, go to Twitter, find out who's claiming responsibility for this. Nobody knew about the attack at that point, so he was shocked to find out there's an attack. I said, we're okay now. Let's try to be okay more, so help us. So then he told me ISIS is already praising the attack, so we already know that you can't give up, you can't surrender, either death or living it. We made a basic plan. I told her, look, I'm going to use this hot water that's just boiling so hot. If anyone opens the door just searching, I'm going to surprise attack them with water. And I'll wrestle them to take away their weapon. Meanwhile, you run straight to that point where you saw people running to and get there, and I'll just follow you. Now, I know that's not going to happen. I knew she's probably going to make it, but I'm not going to make it because I knew something she didn't know, that all of them have suicide vests. Suicide vests are connected to their fingers, their index fingers, and under any threat like that, it would go off. But at that point, it was someone that I loved, that I married not even a week before or 10 days before. And now that person's my family. For the first time, I feel like I have to protect something. And it just, it wasn't a fun feeling because before me, when me and you and others or me myself would run around these front lines and cover the war, it was fun and games. It was just you. There's nobody else that you were responsible for to protect.
Mm.
At that
And
point, I felt
also,
weak.
also we made a decision to put ourselves in that situation. That
Exactly.
was a
We didn't make
conscious
a decision,
choice.
me and her. Yeah, we
Yeah,
did. She
that
didn't
was
make that
somebody.
decision. Yeah,
And
yeah.
in her case, she wasn't asking to be put on the front line. She was
No,
transiting through an airport,
no.
and and that is very different. And so when people always ask you about war zone work, and I always say it's my choice to be there. If something happens, I have to accept that I've made a conscious choice to put myself in danger. But no civilian, no other sort of no one else should have to make that decision. Um,
Absolutely. She was come back
be
from a
put in that
honeymoon.
situation. Mm.
She was come back from a honeymoon, and then to shatter that dream, and all of a sudden it's a nightmare. That I was just feeling so weak and so that it's out of my control. What can I do to protect her? So luckily, time passed. I don't want to go into details. Time passed, and we survived that attack. But the trauma was huge, and it still lingers. We still look over our shoulders when we go to airports, to concerts, to big things. We try to take it lightly now, and we say, "Who's going to find the exit sign first?" So we already know where to go if something happens. And people don't understand these kind of traumatic events, these kind of terrorist attacks. It's not just the ones that heal, it's the scars that never heal, which are in your mind, in your heart.
Does that feel more heightened for you now as a parent, knowing that you have this small, innocent human being? So you're not just protecting your wife anymore. You've got a child, and I just know for me, um, I could never have imagined sort of the depth of love in having a baby. I love my partner, I love my parents, I love my siblings to no end, but there's just something so undescribable about that sort of love and need to protect a child. How is the trauma that you've experienced, how do you sort of see that playing out as a parent?
I'm overprotective, I'm not gonna lie to you. And sometimes my wife and relatives hate taking me with them to the park because I'm like, no, don't come, don't do this, don't do that, don't jump here. So they're like, he's a kid, he's a boy, let him be a boy. I'm like, no, no. So I think it affects my mind. And like you said, I loved my family, my parents, my brother, my friends, my neighbors, but I never, my wife, but I never could imagine the amount of love that instantly triggers the minute you see that little baby coming out of the womb. It's, I can't imagine. I can't describe it. It's just something that when George came out of, and I looked at him, it was just instantly this amount of love that just overflows, and it's renewable. It doesn't end. Every day it's more and more and more. And I just got home right now, and he looked at me and says, "Hi, Daddy." And to me, that's the world. That right there, when he talks to me, when he hugs me, when he plays with me, it's just, there's no other enjoyment similar to that.
It is, it's incredible. And as I said to a friend, it's you're in the same boat. You've done so many things with your life. You will continue to do so many more, but having a child is the absolute best thing you have done and will ever do. Like there's just nothing I can do in my life
No,
aside from
nothing
having more
compares.
children that will top having Raven. Yeah, I just want to impart that to anyone that's on the fence about whether I have kids or not have
No,
kids.
do
I
it, do
do
it, do
it.
it, do
Yeah,
it, do
you
it, do it. Yeah.
just
No,
won't
no
regret it.
trips, no vacations, nothing, or even. At nighttime,
Absolutely.
I sit and watch a show or a movie, and then he comes and climbs on the couch and just puts his head on my chest. There's nothing, no feeling in the world could substitute that.
Absolutely. And sort of just on that note, so I just preface for a minute here. So with our trips, Stephen is an absolute rock star in Iraq, in Baghdad. Going with him anywhere, it's people come up and we'd be in the middle of a Ashura, and people would be running up, or we'd be at some random restaurant smoking hookah somewhere, and people would come up because they follow Stephen on Facebook, and he's always sort of been the arbiter of news and getting to things and getting to the root of politics or terrorism or whatever the issues are in Iraq. It really is a rock star. But with that, comes the dark side of pissing people off, to be frank. And you had a lot of people that didn't like you, what you were reporting, the truth, and a lot of people that, yeah, it would be, we're talking about Iraq, people that would be happy to do whatever horrible things. How did that sort of affect you as well, going into parenting, knowing that you really are this public figure that has a huge amount of support, but also has a contingency of enemies?
Well, I mean, you cannot discuss or cover politics without pissing off people. You know that. I have friends who are sports reporters, and the amount of hate they get for reporting their opinion on a coach or a decision regarding a sports team is tremendous. So imagine now you're reporting on people who passionately believe in something, who would die for that thing, and then you come and say, this is wrong, or your leader misled you. So you're definitely going to deal with that. At first, it was people who were sympathizing with ISIS that hated my guts, that would slowly slow down attacking me because they realized how bad ISIS was. But I have news for you. They didn't always feel like that. In the beginning, they felt that these guys are just another rebels, like Syrian rebels or whatever. Um, Now I face that with people who are loyalists to the Iranian regime in Iraq, who think that the militias and Iranian militias and all that, it's great and pink and rosy and beautiful. And I try to show them the real picture of what's happening, and that creates enemies, and that makes people pissed off. And I understand that. I try to keep my self balanced. I try to sort of tune out when I'm with George, because it's very important to have a work-life balance sort of thing. I understand our field, it can be very, very difficult to do that since we're around the clock, 24 hours. Things, news stories do not have appointments. News stories happen when they happen. But I try to not let that deviate from my time with George or my mental investment with him or emotional investment with him. Yeah.
Do you have any rituals sort of within Syrian culture or Arabic culture that you've brought? Is there any birth rituals? Is there any kind of growing up, coming of age rituals, or what? Tell us a little bit about those aspects that you've incorporated still in your life with your family today.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we had the normal traditions of baptism, and you have a nice little get together for the family afterward. Um, Everything, it's family oriented, so he gets to play with a lot of cousins. He gets to play with a lot of our friends' kids as well. So a lot of that is incorporating in his life early, that there's social skills, there's community around him. And that's very important for me. That's one of the decisions we decided to stay in California, and obviously to have that family tie and make sure George grows up with the same community level that we grew up with. So a lot of that, a lot of good food too. A lot of people that want to cook for him. It's grandmas or uncles and aunts and things. He gets a lot of toys too.
What kind of food did you give him sort of as a toddler, what you give him now, what you gave him when he was starting solids? Did you do the whole typical American puree thing,
Yeah,
or
he
did you
he likes no, he doesn't like applesauce. If that's what he's he cannot stand applesauce. When Narmeen tried to feed him that one time, he was angry, and he looked at her and said, "Why would you do that to me?" So he doesn't like applesauce. He does like though. He likes chicken, fried chicken, chicken tenders. He likes pizza. He likes pancakes. Oh God, he can do that every day. His favorite breakfast for years has been peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So he's Americanized in that, in the cuisine section. He's into I would say Mediterranean food. He likes rice and the different soups and different stews that come with the rice. So he's into that. He loves that. He's been open to both cuisines and he loves it.
I love that. Is that
Yeah.
what you remember as a child? Was it different for you because you grew up in Iraq? What do you kind of remember just about your early childhood?
Yeah, obviously similar, very similar. I did like a lot of different American iconic foods. I mean, we had hamburgers in Iraq, obviously, that hamburgers everywhere. So we had that. I liked hot dogs. We had them too. Not much pizza. Pizza wasn't that popular during the sanctions, but I love pizza. I tried it in Jordan when I was a kid and I loved it with Pizza Hut when Pizza Hut used to be good, not anymore. And yeah, it was a mixture. I always wanted to mix the cuisines, and one of the things I love about America that you could go cross street to any plaza and you're gonna find some sort of authentic food from somewhere. There's authentic food. You can live here and travel the world. I always say that you could live here and experience, especially places like California or even Virginia where you are. You can definitely drive 5 miles down and eat any food you want. So yeah.
Awesome. What was the education like that you remember in Iraq? Especially, I mean, that's an interesting time. You're growing up under the Saddam regime, also under the sanctions. What was it like going to school as a little boy in Kirkuk?
I was very good in school, so I was always put in special kind of schools for kids who were had higher grades and did better. Growing up was fun in the Iraqi elementary school, I would say. It was a lot of fun. We had it was co-ed, so we had boys and girls in school till we reached fifth grade. In fifth grade, there was some stupid decision by Azzaduli, who was a command or one of the leaders of Saddam's regime. His idea was to segregate boys and girls. It was the start of Saddam's what was called the faith movement, or the faith initiative that wanted to Islamize the country more and more. And we immediately saw the results as kids that all of a sudden, a few months ago, I was, pulling this girl's hair, joking with her. We were just friends. She was just another guy. But now all of a sudden they're not. They were different. And that started that. So up to fifth grade was fun. After that, it was weird, segregated, just boys schools. High school was fun as well. Was a lot of coming of age and all that, but also the ghost of war started haunting us. That we knew something's going to happen. We knew a war is going to happen. That was starting in 2002. So that sort of marinated into it, the pressures of the war coming in. But before that, it was a lot of we played soccer, we played video games. That was our escape. We would go all day long to video game halls. We couldn't really buy the consoles. People can ask me, why would you go to a hall or to a place where you pay money and play? Because we couldn't buy them. They're super expensive because of sanctions. So we would have two ways. Either we go and play, um, or we would, like an arcade pretty much, or we would chip in money and we would rent it at nighttime. When the arcade shuts down, they would rent out the devices, and you can only get it from nighttime and bring it back at early morning so they can use it again for their business. And that entailed that we would have 5, 6 kids renting in someone's house and staying up all night and playing the video game. And then you do not want to sleep, because if you sleep, you'll get covered. They will lower the volume because then you lose your turn and they can play more. So it was great memories. We did with what we had, and we made it happen.
Um, I remember you and I had a discussion about the looting that happened in the beginning when the US first came, that I think the US
Yes.
just wasn't prepared for. Can you tell us a little bit about your memories of that, and I guess how you think that really shaped
Okay, so
narrative
here's
of the
so
war?
yeah, so my city fell on April 10th, not 9th, like Baghdad. So we were sitting there saying, okay, what's going to happen? Are we going to be having Saddam as our leader, and then Baghdad is, obviously it's American forces in Baghdad, and what's gonna happen to us? So that was another 24 hours of we don't know what's going to happen, and then all of a sudden the city fell, and it was not the American troops surprisingly did not enter it. It was entered by Kurdish allies and others to the American forces. The American forces sort of were worried about the oil fields because they didn't want Saddam to, blow up the oil fields, and then we'd have a catastrophic problem. What happened is I was 15, so adrenaline was kicking in. There's obviously something's going on, so I was trying to figure out what's going on. I was watching from where I was outside of my house. A lot of main things were nearby, within half or quarter mile away. Everything was either right or left. A lot of central locations. So when the looting started, I was pretty disappointed because then you see how things were just looted, and then places were burned down, and how people were looting random people that were not even from our city. We didn't know them. They were looting tanks, artillery pieces, and my father was terrified. He's like, "This is not looking good. We're gonna go into chaos." And this is coming from a 40-some-year-old man that at that point he served in the military. He knew war. He knew what chaos looks like. And when he saw some guy stealing a tank and driving it through a street, my dad was not. He's like, is this what Bush wanted for us? Is this what Bush? And I'm like, Dad, just calm down. We don't know what's going to happen yet. And he knew. I didn't have life experience at that point to understand what's happening in front of me. But at nighttime, it got worse when we start hearing people were killed. They came to our house trying to take our car. So that's when we knew, okay, this is not going to look good. That things could go south pretty easily. And it was chaos. It was pure chaos after that. A lot of ethnic divisions all of a sudden came out, and political parties and leaders started fueling these ethnic divisions. And when I saw a bunch of people from my neighborhood walking toward a different neighborhood with a guy holding a Quran and reading, and there was a bunch of young guys, I know them, I grew up with some of them, behind him holding RPGs and weapons. That was one of the most terrifying moments in my life. That all of a sudden, these peaceful people that lived together, never had a problem, there's a guy leading them, telling them that God wants them to go kill other people that lived with them peacefully. It was scary. It was very scary. And I label that era, the post invasion, as the era of chaos. I was there for about a year and 5 months, exactly after the invasion. So I got to see a lot of that unfolding before I left Iraq.
And it really seems to me that Iraq's just never recovered from that. The divisions that were not there when you were growing up, unfortunately, it is such a divisive country right now.
It is. It's very divisive. I mean, look at any issue that faces Iraq. For instance, right now, there's the war in the Middle East, obviously war in Gaza, the Israel-Lebanon clashes. Look at Iraqis. Some Iraqis are like, we shouldn't get involved because we don't want Iraq to go back to the war era, which we just barely came out of. Some Iraqis are like, no, let's do it. Let's go fight Israel. So even in every single issue that doesn't even involve Iraq, that Iraq is involved somehow. If there's a problem between Iran and America, some people are divided, this camp or that camp. So the issues are just, the divisions there, like you said. Iraq has not recovered, and divisions are there, and the mistrust between the demographics is there because everyone's blaming the other side for whatever goes wrong.
And Iraq really for just decades and decades has been at war, with very small moments of reprieve going back to the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s. And then it just kind of continued to spiral from there, both dictatorship and war. And what I really observed when I was there was sort of how much I remember we were staying with some friends of yours in Baghdad one night, and they had a little boy, and he was in the Iraqi Special Forces, I think, and he was going off to work in the morning, and had a little boy just kind of sitting there, just sort of looking at the gun. Just everything was very normal to him. The situation was very normal to him, and I just remember thinking, does it make a difference when you grow up with war? There's an acceptance of it in that
It
it's
changes
not,
the view of
yeah,
see,
and it,
when I came here, when I came to America, a lot of my ideologies changed about that, about how life should be, how living should be. And now, for instance, I was upset because I saw a video of young boys, extremely young. I'm talking maybe 8, 9, firing a gun while the dad was sitting there looking at them proud. And I posted about it. I said, people shouldn't do this. Let kids be kids. They shouldn't be firing guns at second grade and third grade. And I noticed a lot of Iraqi men, and understandably, they said, this is our culture. We raise them to be warriors. In case another ISIS or whoever comes in, they're ready. So I paused and I said, you know, to them that makes sense. To me, it doesn't. I think kids should be kids. But what if these kids grew up in that threat? I mean, he could be 12 and then boom, ISIS attacks and invades his town. What is he going to do? Can he defend himself? So that's, it's a very gray area of things that people are used to, and they deem them okay or deem them normal, which me and you today should not deem them normal.
mm, yeah, it's a it's sort of a painful acceptance that I observed, and yeah, and I agree. No child should be growing up with war, but
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
unfortunately, it just more wars are starting today, and they're starting
And,
by
going back to you saying the fatherhood and motherhood, what's different now when I hear about people being killed. Now I immediately think, did he have kids? Did he have a wife? Did he have a mother? Did he have so it's different when you're a father or mother yourself than when you're reporting on things when you're just single. Now you start thinking, you start imagining, okay, who's going to tell his young son, that his dad is not coming home? And things like that start affecting your head.
and that's sadly so many Iraqi little boys and girls who will grow up without fathers as a result, or have grown up without fathers as a result of these wars, and it's yeah, it's incredibly sad and painful. Do you think that does Iraq still have fairly defined gender roles in what the father's responsibilities are and the mother's responsibilities?
Iraqis were always a little different. They were a little bit more susceptible to some sort of they kept their values, they kept their traditions, but they were susceptible to some 20th century and 21st century adaptations of women work. A lot of Iraqi women work, a lot of female doctors, scientists, engineers, you name it. And the rules are not as strict as other countries in the Middle East, you might say. They're more modernized in many. I'm talking the big Iraqi cities. I'm not just talking about countrysides or towns or small towns. So yeah, you definitely see. I mean, the mom is still looked at as the mother of the house, the loving, caring, nurturing mother of the house that cooks and prepares the kids and makes sure everything's good. And the father is the breadwinner that's still looked at as that. However, the challenges of the 21st century and always force communities to adapt. So a lot of Iraqis, the wives work in different institutions, and they know that they share responsibilities. Who takes the kids to daycare? Who does that? Who cooks sometimes? So yeah, Iraq is not as locked in on these kind of things. Iraq is still locked in on traditions and obviously definitions of marriage and all these things. And I don't see. I see that as a good thing that Iraq kept its traditional values, and I myself, as a Christian, I believe in these values and I respect them, and I want the Western world to understand that what flies here doesn't really fly there. So stop widening the gap between the Middle East or the East in general, Asia included, and the West. We're in a race here to erase a lot of things and just anarchy style destruction, say, we don't care about traditional family, we don't care about this and that, we don't know, no, that's wrong. You should let people decide how they want to live. And I am not forcing my ideologies. I'm not trying to be a radical here, but I don't want to be forced upon that all these things are happening. My son needs his mom and he needs his dad. That's how a family is defined in my religion, in my Bible. And I respect if someone else says, no, that's not, I respect that. But do not try to impose your will on mine, because I'm not trying to impose mine on yours. And that should be a trigger to a lot of Western activists or journalists who think that, or not even, sorry, take it back, no journalists, diplomats. A lot of diplomats try to force Iraqis to do things that are okay in Austria or Germany. That's not how it is. That's not how it is. These societies have been there for thousands of years. And I'm not talking about okaying, limiting women's role. No, you know me. I'm a feminist at heart. I'm talking about other things, and Iraqis are having enough of it. And I'm talking women and men, and they're saying, Stephen, voice us out. We're done. We don't want this. We're worried about our kids, our families, that someone is trying to impose that culture that's not just foreign, it's foreign to the West. I mean, when I came to America in 2004, I hardly heard about these things. And now it's just like, your kids got to learn this. And I'm worried about my son. I'm going to put him through private school because these things are just too much. No child, I don't know if I'm deviating from our topic. I'm sorry, but you asked me about raising my son here. No child is second grade and third grade and first grade should sit there and worry about sexual stuff. That shouldn't be. Let them be innocent. Let them grow up and decide what they want to do with their lives. Not now, not when they're 6 and 7. If my son thinks he's Spider-Man, he's not really Spider-Man. He just thinks that. So at this age, let them be innocent, because the children's innocence is the last innocence we have in this world. This world is a dark place. Let's not corrupt their minds. That's the last thing we have. I'm sorry I went on
No,
a
you're good.
tantrum, but yeah.
A child's innocence is certainly it's certainly the most beautiful and the most purest thing that we have. Is no, I know your mother. How long has she been in the US? She came out a couple of years ago as well.
Yeah. My family's entirely here.
All here.
Everyone's
And
yeah.
why is that? That's obviously important to you to have your sort of entire family around. What role do the grandparents play in George's life? And do you think that is
Well,
also
we have a
something?
problem with the grandmas, because we have to strictly enforce that no lollipops, no candy. And I figured out she was hiding it because she would put in her purse until George started digging in her purse. I'm like, what are you looking for? He's like, oh, Nana gives me candy. I'm like, okay. So it's that unconditional love they have for the grandkids. It's definitely amazing. He loves his grandmas, both of them, and he enjoys having fun with them and going out with them, and they spoil him. Yeah,
I
they
think
spoil
that's
him.
something that I don't know, maybe is a little bit sadder in maybe sad's not the right, I'm not sure what the right word is, but in Western culture where we live very much in solos, kind of away from our family, away from our parents, away from our extended family, and I don't know, that to me is something I hope society can come and in some generations bring that back a little bit, because I think that's such a beautiful
And
thing.
I try to tell Americans that I speak to, and Iraqis as well, that America, or at least when I came here back, 2 decades ago, it didn't seem too far from how Iraq was family wise. I mean, I lived in Virginia, Southern Virginia, so obviously Southern hospitality, Southern comfort, the families. People were still, they cared about each other, that the parents cared about the kids, the grandkids would do every single thing just to spend a weekend with the grandkids. So a lot of that is universal, and that's, I think that's what really built this country, and that should be embraced, not fought off. That should be embraced, that people should be together, neighbors should throw barbecues and all that, because that family feeling, the kids grow up together. Nothing beats that. You do not want to live alone in an apartment with no friends or family members nearby, or none. You don't want to do that. It's bad for you. It's bad for your health, bad for your psyche, and for everything else.
I totally agree. You could grow up, with a lot less money, but be so rich in those sort of broader friendships than if you had a lot of money but were living a
Just
pretty
by yourself, yeah,
isolated
yeah,
childhood.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I definitely know which one I'd choose. I've loved chatting you today. Just my last question. I guess, do you plan to take George to Iraq anytime soon? Is that something you can do, will do, want to do? And what is your hope for him?
I would have loved to. Obviously, my safety and obviously his safety would be endangered if I do that. As you know, I've had received death threats over the last few years, and I know it won't be safe for me to go there. So we will we will cherish the memories that his daddy has and transform them to him. Maybe one day in the future, if things look different, I will be able to take him there so he can see it.
I hope so. And I definitely have to go back with you. I will always have a very deep love for Iraq, for Baghdad. It's an incredibly special place that I try to go to still now, at least every couple of years, just because it's there's so much to it. And so I hope one day we'll be able to take the kids. That would be lovely. And I adore you. I adore your family. I can't wait to catch up with you next time I'm in California, or if you come towards DC. And I really treasure our friendship.
Thank you so much, Holly. You mean a lot to us. I love you and I love our friendship and all the times we've spent together, all the adventures we went on during the war coverage and others. And you were there for me in Istanbul and other times. And I'm sure I would never forget that. And my wife and the entire family love you and they appreciate you. You're a
Thank you.
great
And
person inside and out.
likewise, likewise. And where can people follow your work that are interested in Iraq coverage and learning a little bit more
Sure,
about
sure. I
things
do
in the Middle
most of
East?
my English coverage. I do it mostly at on X, formerly Twitter, at the Stephen Nabil, THE Stephen Nabil, THESTEVENNABIL. That's where I do most of my English coverage. I'm more active on Facebook. My Facebook page, it's Stephen Nabil. It's verified; they can find it. That a lot of it is in Arabic, but now with technology, I guess a lot of translation. One of my wife's cousins, she doesn't really read Arabic or speak Arabic. She was born in America. She told me about a news story one day. I'm like, how'd you know this? She's like, oh, I follow your page. I'm like, how do you follow my page? She said, oh, I use the Google Translate thing that comes on with it. So yeah, so technology is obviously helping us. So yeah, so Facebook is where I'm at and Twitter.
You're a rock star, Stephen.
Thank you. It was lovely talking to you, and I'm excited for your podcast. And you're always everything you touch, you do it perfectly. So I'm excited for this experience.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye bye. Thank you, Ollie.